program. Carolyn, if you'd like to get us going.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Barrington Town Council Candidates Forum. This webinar is being sponsored by the League of Women Voters and the East Bay newspapers. The League is a grassroots nonprofit education and advocacy organization. We conduct voter registration drives and candidate forums like this one. The League is nonpartisan. We never endorse a particular candidate or political party. Tonight's co-sponsor, the East Bay newspapers, publish print and digital media news throughout the East Bay, the Barrington Times being our local publication. Our moderator is Scott Pickering, General Manager of the East Bay Media Group. Debating tonight are the 4 candidates running for the 3 seats on the Barrington Town Council: Kustell, Annelise Conway, John Alessandro, and Robert Humm. The speaking order was determined prior to the start of this forum. The 5 to 7 questions that will be posed this evening have been submitted by the public via email and are chosen by the moderator. The first candidate will have 1 minute to answer the first question, then each of the other candidates will have the same amount of time to respond to that question. If any candidate wishes to comment further, he or she may raise their hand to be recognized by the moderator. The timing will be done by League members Joanne DeVoe and Tom Padua. When a speaker has only 15 seconds left, the timers will hold up a sign. When the speaker's time is up, a red stop sign will be waved. When the speaker sees the stop sign, he or she may finish the sentence, but if another sentence is started, he or she will be charged comment or rebuttal time. Linda Poole, also a League member, will be keeping track of how many comment times have been used by each candidate on her chart. Our moderator, Scott Pickering, will be recording the forum so that it can be watched by the public starting tomorrow up until Election Day. You'll be able to view the video by going to the League of Women Voters website, www.lwbri.org. My name is Carolyn Rosenthal. I'd like to thank everyone on screen as well as those behind the scenes for their participation and support. And with that, I'd like to turn the forum over to Scott.
Thank you, Carolyn. Welcome, everyone. I'll just repeat a couple quick things, which the candidates have already heard. I apologize that I'm inside my son's bedroom hiding from the rest of the family. It's not the most professional backdrop, but in order to have a cone of silence, this is what it took. To the audience members, we cannot see you or hear you. You can see and hear us. So your role here tonight is watch and be entertained and informed. So we're going to go through the evening. I'm the tour guide for all the candidates here, and I'm going to ask them a series of questions that were sent in from the public that I sorted through. There were some that were redundant. There's some that I rephrased and reframed, but it represents questions that are out there in the community. And the other thing I'll say at the outset is that these are pretty meaty questions, and I think we should respect anyone who's running for office, but also anyone who's sitting here and has 1 minute without any direct knowledge of what's going to be asked of them to organize their thoughts, make a coherent statement, and do it all in 60 seconds. It's a tough challenge, and you know, they deserve the congratulations at the end for a job well done, because however they do, it's a job well done. This isn't the easiest thing. So, all right, we're going to get going. We are going to have opening statements of up to 30 seconds. Mr. Kustell, you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Pickering, Ms. Rosenthal, and the League. I'm Carl Kustell. I practiced law for about 2 decades, and I live in town with my sons, who are all Barrington Public School age students, and my wife, Melissa. My campaign from the beginning has been about economics, making smart decisions to get through the pandemic and the COVID challenges we have facing small businesses and our town as a whole. We can do that by making investments in small businesses, making our town more walkable, and investing in resiliency, renewability, and also in reaffirming our values so that the town is welcoming to everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Conway.
Hey everybody, I'm Annelise Conway. I'm running for Barrington Town Council to provide representation in my perspective in our town decision making. I'm new to Barrington, but I grew up in a town a lot like Barrington, one that preserved a small town feel, but made a few missteps that we could all learn from. I also left my comfort zone and lived in a lot of places that are not like Barrington, cities and towns from literally Seattle to Maine to North Carolina. And I see public service as an important part of our civic responsibility, that each person can serve in whatever capacity they have, and I'm honored to have the privilege to be a candidate.
Thank you. Mr. Alessandro.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Alessandro. I'm running for town council. I'm a lifelong resident of Barrington and moved back here to raise my family. Most of you know me. I used to serve on the school committee. I am for protection and better use of our open spaces, streamlined business regulations, more cooperation in government, and my trademark, fiscal responsibility. My hope is to be a voice for all residents that do not feel they have one now. And I would be honored if you could consider voting for me.
Thank you. Mr. Humm.
Good evening. Thanks everyone for participating tonight. I grew up in Barrington. I moved back here 12 years ago to raise my family too, with my wife, Kara. Now I have 2 kids here. And our community means a lot to me, and I enjoy giving back to our community. I've coached youth sports in town for many years. I've been appointed to several town boards. I'm currently the chair of the Planning Board and chair of the Economic Development Commission. Now I want to continue to help our community by being a member of our town council. So I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
I always forget. Sorry about that. So we're going to move right into the question portion now. We're going to begin with Mr. Kustell. Every candidate is going to have the same question, a chance to have a 1-minute answer or longer if they choose. And here's the first question. This might be one of the longer ones in the night, so bear with me. Can you assess the town's fiscal review process from council to appropriations committee to financial town meeting? Do you think Barrington has the right system in place to both balance the interests of taxpayers and the delivery of adequate town services, or would you like to see any changes?
I believe that we have an effective process, and that's reflected in what really is a very effective budget. We had a change in the partisan makeup of the COA, and you didn't see massive cuts made. You didn't see a change in the way that we spend our money. We also, as a school committee, because that's actually most of the money that we spend is on the schools, we actually spend less per student than most towns. We've been successful in changing and transforming our village center, and I think that it's fairly clear that we've spent our money wisely. That said, we will be facing some challenges in the next 2 years given COVID and the pandemic and the effect of this town, and we'll have to be judicious in the way we address them.
Thank you. Ms. Conway.
So I think the first thing that really calls to attention to me is the citizen input. And I think that while the financial town meeting is open for all, there are obviously a number of different things that could be changed. And obviously at this point, we don't have the technology or the ability to have every citizen's input included, but I would like to see greater conversation among the community in terms of our financial process. That being said, people come here for the schools, for the services that we have. I know there are tough times ahead, and yet there are certain elements of the community that are the heart of who we are that we can't let go. So in terms of what the assessment of the financial process would be, I think it's important that we have greater community input and greater citizen response and understanding of how the budgets are made, so that when the tax bill comes, people understand exactly what it's going for.
Thank you. Mr. Alessandro.
Well, being a member of the Committee on Appropriations and the Budget Forecasting Committee, obviously I feel the work that both of them do to provide the public with information is good. I mean, we do a lot of stuff to explain the budget, how we get to it. All the meetings are open to the public. Everything is transparent. I mean, our meetings are recorded. People can listen to them. I mean, our secretary, Cynthia Rosengard, has been great. I mean, the notes are extremely detailed. If you want to go find out anything or learn, it's the age-old story. I mean, public engagement is the public has to engage. I enjoy my work on the Committee on Appropriations. I think we are doing well. I think we're, making the town better and more transparent. And I think if more people looked at the budget forecasting document, which explains how we get the start of these budgets, I think we'd go very fine. I think people would look at it and be surprised at the information that's provided, as well as the information that's provided in the Committee on Appropriations documents. I think the town meeting, or the financial town meeting, is a way for everyone to get to choose. And we proved this year that when smart minds get together, we found a way to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Humm.
I think the other candidates raised some very good comments. I think overall the town has a pretty robust process for its budget, soliciting lots of feedback from different stakeholders, including the opportunity for community feedback. I think the financial town meeting is an excellent idea, and I think it could be improved upon to get probably even some more community engagement. I agree with what Annelise said on that. I think the town can probably do a little bit of a better job communicating in terms of some of these issues. I think people who are directly involved in the process certainly know what's going on and have all the information at their fingertips. I think East Bay newspapers, to their credit, does a pretty good job of getting the information out, but not everybody is a subscriber to East Bay newspapers. Not everybody reads it front to back, other than, maybe the police report or some other sections of it that they find interesting. So I think the town could do a better job of communicating. And a better job overall of getting engagement into the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Humm, I'm not going to call on you anymore after dissing my paper, so I'm kidding.
That was not a diss at all.
Oh, I'm kidding.
It's actually a compliment.
I appreciate it. All publicity is good. For the audience, just so you're aware, if we didn't explain clearly enough, the check mark next to Mr. Alessandro's name is because he went through his allotted time and use an extra wild card comment period. So the candidates have 7 of those to use throughout the night. So far, we've used 1, but just if you're following along, that's what that is. All right, we're going to move. Excuse me. We're going to move to the next question, beginning with Ms. Conway. You all knew this question would be in here. In your opinion, is Barrington inclusive, equitable, and welcoming? And do you support the recent efforts of the town government to respond to this same question?
I really appreciate that question. Throughout the places that I've lived, I have been involved in terms of inclusivity and diversity efforts, and think it's a really important effort to put the town's strength behind. I will say, I think that one of the biggest issues with diversity and inclusion efforts is that they tend to come from a place of people who already exist and live in the town, and to not have the reflection of being an outsider to truly understand what the access restrictions may be. One of the things that just struck me in terms of talking about the financial town meeting and the information that's out there is I think we're looking beyond the barriers to access and potentially not recognizing what may exist. May it be people who work on the weekends who are unable to go to certain events, people who are strapped in terms of funds or time. And I think it's really important that we have a broad perspective on what diversity and inclusion efforts actually are versus what we think they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alessandro.
I think Barrington is a welcoming community. Can we do better? Absolutely. We should all strive to do better. We should all strive to make Barrington more diverse, more inclusive. This has been the talk in most of the time that I've lived here. When I started to live here, it was odd that my parents from Providence and Warren moved to Barrington. They were like, what are these outsiders doing here? So, it's been the story for a long time. Can we do better? Yes. Is the local government focusing on it? Yes. It's the topic of the day. If you're not talking about it, then you're just ignoring it. And we obviously can't ignore this. So I think it's important that we go and as a community, try to address it. Do I think there's a legislative path? I think that's for the state and to decide. I think it's our job is to make it as welcoming as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Humm?
I agree with a lot of those comments from both Annelise and John. I think Barrington on the whole is a welcoming place. And I think Barrington on a whole is an inclusive place, or at least it strives to be. And I think it has a long way to go. I think nationwide and at the local level, there's lots of discussions about improving diversity, inclusion, equity, and everything that goes along with it. And I think that's a really important discussion. I think the key to addressing it is collaboration, getting feedback from lots of different stakeholders, lots of different groups who have diverse experiences, all different sorts of races, ethnicities, financial backgrounds, educational backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and other types of backgrounds. I think all of that type of input is very important and I think should be included in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kustell.
I think the values in Barrington are clearly in the right place. We saw 1,200 people come out for a Black Lives Matter demonstration a few months back. It was expected to get 120 people. The values of this community were clearly on display. We can really attack the problem of a lack of diversity with minority hiring. The more you're around in minority outreach, the more you're around people who are different than you, the more people as a whole become people who are different than they are. I think we can also take really the efforts by the police department to expand minority hiring and to take a look at their use of force policies is a very positive thing. And finally, it would come down to affordable housing and making sure we keep making progress on that in the right way. The values of this community are unquestionably in the right place. We've seen that time and time again. I've seen that talking to people going door to door, and I am very, very optimistic about our future.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing else on this, we'll move to another question, beginning with Mr. Alessandro first. Should the town government be in the practice of raising flags, making public proclamations, or promoting social or political causes? In your view, is this a role the local government should play?
I'm surprised by the question. I didn't think this would come up. First, my stance on this is just like I said, earlier. We need to get a comprehensive policy like many other towns have done. I think it needs to be debated publicly, and I think it needs to have some type of finality to it. This, letting one person decide or not having a comprehensive flag policy has hurt us. And I think, to tie in with the last question, diversity and inclusion starts with getting everyone on the same page and talking about it. Don't just arbitrarily do something. And I think we can look at it and say, get equal representation for everyone. And if we had a good flag policy, we wouldn't even be talking about this.
Thank you. And for candidates, if you ever want me to reread the question, I'm happy to. But Mr. Humm, your turn next.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think obviously there's an issue in town that I think personally has become too politicized, too divisive. I don't think we should be talking about flagpoles. I think we should be addressing issues in other ways. I think the town probably could benefit from a flag policy. One of the purposes of the town council, I think as the charter states, is to determine policy within the town. So I think this would fall under that purview. But I think that it's important to address issues in a less divisive way than potentially having knee-jerk reactions and addressing it on a flagpole as opposed to in other ways.
Thank you. Mr. Kustell.
This is a case of a foundational American value. Equality is in the Declaration of Independence, in the U.S. Constitution. It is referenced above the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that given what has been going on in this country, when a 30-year Navy veteran, Jim Cooney, our town manager, raises a Black Lives Matter flag, that is a most appropriate response. We certainly, as a town, believe Black Lives Matter. We are not opposed to the idea that Black Lives Matter. We are not neutral on the subject. It reflects our values. And I think that if you are a member of a minority ethnic group in this town, you should have that message sent to you by the whole community so you know that you feel comfortable here, that we are truly a welcoming community. I agree that it is not the number one issue or the number one effort we can make in terms of inclusion. I mentioned hiring, I mentioned policing, I mentioned housing. There are other efforts we can make, and I think they're more important. But I do think we're sending a signal both to people who live here, people who work here, and even people who may consider moving here, that we are a community that welcomes people from all backgrounds. You can never go wrong with that. It shouldn't be controversial, and we can certainly do that as a community.
Thank you. Ms. Conway.
As I start speaking and I'm muted. I really appreciate the question. I want to point out two different things, though. I think you mentioned flag raising and proclamations. I also agree that there should be a flag policy, but more importantly, I think that, and the reason I think there should be a flag policy is because there are so many different elements of our community that we could focus on. I sit on the Housing Board of Trustees, and I know that our affordable housing statistics, as compared to the rest of the state, are abysmal. If we could work on preserving affordable housing in town, I'd rather see the efforts of our town council meetings going to some of the important issues that surround actual diversity and inclusion, potentially putting together a diversity and inclusion committee as was proposed. But I do think there's a difference between a proclamation and flag raising. And I just want to make that clear because I agree with Carl in the sense that allowing people to feel welcome and making sure that people know that they're valued, that's someone's personal impact. I'm going to continue if I may. But that's someone's personal value in feeling as though the community belongs to them. And there's nothing that should hold us back from including every Barringtonian as someone who is a part and a member of this town, and that their families matter, their lives matter, their communities matter. But I do think there's the difference between raising a flag and being on the forefront of social change and proclamations.
Thank you. Anyone else on this? Okay, we're going to move to another question, slightly different direction, beginning with Mr. Humm first. Do you believe the town's response to the pandemic has been too strict, too loose, or just right? It sounds like the three bears. Would you second guess any actions thus far or encourage any other actions moving forward?
Thank you. I'll go with Baby Bear. I think the town's reactions have been just right so far. And in fact, I've been proud of the town's reactions. One of my, I guess, long-standing, I'll say, criticisms of the town is lack of communication. And I think the town has done an excellent job of communication throughout the pandemic, which is extremely important for citizens who are concerned, anxious, stressed, all of the above about what's going to happen and how's our town going to react to it. So I think the fact that our town jumped on it right from the start, I think they did a very good job. I do not think they were too restrictive. I think they were willing to work with all of its constituents, including both residents and businesses. I think throughout the pandemic, the town has done a good job of acknowledging where it can improve. And I think one good example is the town's response to the business community. One of the things that the town, or a few of the things that the town has done to show its support is relax some of the restrictions on the town's businesses, because clearly they're struggling throughout the pandemic and through some of the economic challenges that come with it. So they've relaxed some restrictions to help better advertising and some other things. They've relaxed some fees. And while they might not have a huge economic impact, it has a pretty good goodwill impact in terms of the businesses understanding that the town is here for them, supporting them. And I think that that's an important message to get across. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kustell.
I would agree with Mr. Humm that the town's response has been just about right. Now, there's always more we can do. Rob and I served together in the Economic Development Commission, and we recommended most of the recommendations we made in terms of loosening regulations on signage and spacing and supporting the Take It Outside program to help local businesses have been adopted and encouraged by the town. I think the town has been excellent in sending out a daily report and newsletter from the town manager that people can reference and see what's really going on. We have also had an excellent level of compliance with masks, compliance with business regulations, and in town among the citizenry and among our small businesses. And I think that has been really encouraging, and maybe it's why, it's one reason we have had a very low rate of transfer in this community relative to other communities around Rhode Island. There's always more we can do, but I think the town's response has been really pretty much on the mark.
Thank you. Ms. Conway.
Yeah, I will agree with the two before me. I think the town has handled this absolutely perfectly. I'm impressed not only by the way that initially there was immediate response, there was a seriousness and an understanding of what this actually meant. The commitment to masking, the communication has been terrific. And more than anything, the fact that our kids are back in school. I know that as a parent, that's critically important to both me and to my children's mental health. So I'm thrilled to see that the kids are able to be back in school and that the school has handled it in such a responsible manner and really has seemed to manage it. I think we're fortunate that we haven't had a number of spikes and our infection rate has stayed low. And I do worry about the small businesses in town and being able to weather this. But at the same time, I think that the town has done really all that they could.
Thank you. Mr. Alessandro.
Well, I mean, I think the pandemic response has been unprecedented. I mean, I think we've done a good job. I mean, sitting on the Committee on Appropriations and every week having them say, nope, we don't know what's going on, but we're doing this. Nope, we don't know what's going on, but we're doing this. They were making decisions to move Barrington forward. And I just would like to commend, I mean, working with the town and school officials, I mean, they were coming to us and getting information to make this town safer every single day. And I can tell you from the emails and the responses I've gotten from talking to the town and school officials that, you know, they were working overtime. I mean, you know, I think everyone agrees, you know, everyone could, you know, is underpaid, but they were really doing a great job. And my only complaint that I've heard is that the children could not get out to the open spaces. But I think sometimes we have to be adults and say, you can't do that. Did my kid want to go out and play soccer and lacrosse and go out and hit the ball and all this stuff? Yes, they did, but they needed to do it in a safe manner. And the town put the safety protocols in for everyone. I think we could, you know, maybe look at adjusting those, but I mean, that's the only complaint I heard in the entire time. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to another question. Hopefully I'll find something you guys actually disagree on. Make it more entertaining. Mr. Kustell, this question will begin with you. Council meetings have recently become long and contentious. Why do you think that is? And what do you propose to do to resolve it?
Let's get to the solution, given that we have a minute. First of all, I think we may have to have more frequent council meetings. I think that's important because I see a 7-hour council meeting as a barrier to entry. You cannot expect someone who is kids to watch a town council meeting when they're looking for agenda item number 4 and not knowing when that agenda is going to come up. And it turns out that meeting is 3 times longer than the last movie that they watched. It's just unrealistic. So that would be one thing. Secondly, I would consider the idea of limiting the amount of time that counselors discuss an issue. We cannot limit public comment, but we can certainly limit the amount of time that counselors go back and forth. Third, I think that we want to make sure that we keep them as accessible as possible. I support the idea, and I know it may take a legislative change of keeping them on Zoom and accessible to everyone virtually as well as in person post-COVID.
Thank you. Ms. Conway.
Yes, I also believe that the length of the town council meetings are a barrier to citizen input. That's what I referenced in the very beginning. I think that, like Carl, I think that we could have either more frequent town council sessions or some sort of listening session during which public comment is received at a different time and then discussion happens within the town council. But regardless, I think, just as Carl said, 7 hours just is too long. And it's too important to have everybody participate. And it's a really difficult way to participate. One thing I do worry about is limiting too much of a discussion, because as I've learned, politics is so nuanced that it's difficult to just make the decision. 1 minute's really hard, right? If you're trying to get information in from other people. But to understand the real impact, I think you need to have more input over a broader period of time so that more people can participate.
Thank you. Mr. Alessandro.
Well, I mean, being a member of the school committee where the average meeting time was almost 5 hours, I think running a more efficient meeting is key. And a lot of that is just doing the legwork before and getting a lot of the information and, soliciting some of the input from the town beforehand. Maybe we can get some written statements. I mean, like everyone said, you can't limit public comment, but we can ask for it in advance and hope that we get some so we can react to that. I mean, I think everyone here would love to go into a meeting with all the information you need to make a good decision. Unfortunately, in the town council and school committee and all these others, you don't have all the information. So I think if a more efficient meeting and a more efficient way to get our opinions across, as well as the community's opinions across, would help lessen the time.
Mr. Humm.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm going to have to agree with everybody again. I think everybody raised some good suggestions. I think they are too long at times, not every time, but if it creeps into 5, 6, even 7 hours like we've had, I think that's way too long, and it doesn't encourage public engagement, which is so important to our town, as it should be. Some suggestions, perhaps the council could put, recommended times of discussion on the agenda so that people who are calling in can have an idea of when their agenda item might get hit. That's not perfect. It's not always going to be accurate, but it at least gives people an idea of, I don't need to call in right at 7 o'clock. I can call in at 7:15 or 7:20 or something along those lines. I think if a meeting gets to a certain point where it's so long, I think the council should be mindful of it throughout the meeting and, start to forewarn people that we might need to cut off the meeting at another time and then renotice it for the following week or something along those lines. So people who are at the tail end of the agenda have an early heads up that they might not be heard and that they can chime in at a different time. Thank you.
Thank you. New question, Ms. Conway, starting with you. This is a long one. This is the other long one, so bear with me. And I didn't write all this one. This came from the public. The owners of the former Zion College have failed to move forward with renovations to Belton Court and development of the senior residential village for which they have an approved master plan. They've also allowed the historic building to fall into disrepair, and it serves as a regular nuisance and danger zone for youth, trespassers, and vandalism. Should the town pressure the owners to take action on that plan, do you still believe senior housing is the highest and best use for this property?
Great question, and really appreciate whoever took the time to write that question and have the historical background of it. I think actually that would be a great opportunity for us to connect with the Economic Development Council and potentially use that as a mixed use zoning piece of property. I could see more of a additional shopping center with some senior housing, providing some additional activity centers for other community activities, perhaps community lessons or something of that nature. But I do think that the town should make a push to take Zion back and to make that a bigger part of the community. It's a beautiful resource. It's a historical piece of property. And I think that in terms of what our town could do with that property, it could make living in Barrington an even better place to live.
Thank you. Mr. Alessandro.
Well, I've been involved with this property for a while, being on the assessment board of review when the original Chinese owners bought it. And then we got told that the State Department wouldn't let them in the country to do anything. So, this has kind of been a fiasco for a long, long time. I would love to see senior housing go in because I think, many of my parents and their friends would love to stay in Barrington. but can't find the right residents to stay. I mean, there's been ideas from putting up, you know, a sports facility with an ice rink and a swimming pool and, you know, a turf field indoors and a walking track. And I mean, there's been, the ideas abound, but at the end of the day, you have to take ownership of it and find some way to do that. I mean, I'm not up to date on, you know, whether the current ownership has kept up with their taxes and everything like that, but obviously we see it in the police report every week. So we know it's a problem. And obviously we can use our resources better than to kick kids out from having bonfires there. I think it's, you know, it was a beautiful building. I don't know if it's still that beautiful. But I mean, from Barrington College to Zion Bible Institute, you know, it's been, you know, a storied part of our community. And the other thing is maybe we just protect the open space. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Humm.
Yeah, I think this is a great question too. I'll answer it almost in reverse order. First, I do think that using it for senior housing is the best use of that property. I think there's a need for that in Barrington. I think sometimes our senior community gets overlooked, but often these are people who have been in town for a long, long time and have roots in town and really take a lot of pride in this town. But at some point, they don't really have anywhere else to go when they might get taxed out of Barrington and really want to stay here. So I think that that presents a good opportunity. In terms of what the town should do, I've been involved on several different levels to take a look at this. And obviously it's a magnificent property. It's a historic property that everybody wants. Through the Economic Development Commission, it comes up almost every year in terms of what can we do with the property. Well, there's nothing we can do right now while there's a private property owner. In terms of, you know, some of the opportunities that we might have in town, I think there's really nothing that we can do to further develop that property until the current property owner's development rights have expired. And I think they're just under a year away. They're on their last opportunity for an extension of the review of their development plan for the property, which they haven't done anything with. As a member of the planning board, we review that every year. And in this last year, we put some pretty, I think, stringent restrictions on some of the safety measures that they need to take on the property to see if we can address some of those issues that they've been having with trespassers, fires, broken windows, etc.
Thank you. Mr. Kustell.
The Zion property is a huge opportunity for this community. You have people constantly concerned about what's happening with my taxes. We have a budget where about 92% of our budget is based on residential and commercial taxes. Of that 92%, about 89% are residential, about 11% from commercial tax income. We need to make sure that we change that ratio, and that'll actually, if we're successful at doing that, put less pressure on seniors who are trying to stay in their own homes who choose not to downsize, which is a major issue we have in this town. We can help that by expanding affordable housing. One way to do that is by going forward with the plan we had for senior housing, which required 25% affordable on the Zion property. That plan in 2016 was approved by this town. I'm going to and I think that is the right plan. If we develop it into houses, then you're putting regular houses and you're putting stress on schools and infrastructure and the sewer system. If we were to develop it into a shopping center, I think the neighbors around there are going to go crazy because you're going to have too much traffic. This plan, were we to have a graduated living center, starting with independent living in cottages and moving all the way up to memory care, would be a massive influx of commercial tax revenue into this town. And unlike serving the EDC, we're always promoting local businesses because we want the idea of increasing the livability of this town. But one individual small business doesn't actually affect your tax bill. This really could, were we to go forward. The trick is we have to put pressure on actually to sell it. Right now, their carry costs are very, very low. They have to feel the pressure, strict enforcement of every regulation we have. It is an eyesore and it is a danger. The floors are collapsing in the cottages behind the building. And that someone's going to get hurt back there. Some kid's going to go back there and going to get hurt. There's broken glass, there's graffiti, there's standing water in the basement of the main building, and it's inappropriate. It's an eyesore and it's dangerous to this community. They will be on notice that this is a danger to the community, and we will pressure them, and hopefully they will sell the property. They couldn't get financing before. I think the senior living project is the right plan if we get the right owner.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else from anyone on Zion, we'll move to a new question. We will begin with Mr. Alessandro. Do you believe the town's recreational facilities are adequate for the needs and priorities of the town?
Something near and dear to my heart. You know, I think once the middle school is back online, I think we'll have a better gauge of what we need and, you know, whether it's enough. Right now, I mean, it's an unfair comparison. We've lost, you know, some of our biggest field and use areas in the town for years, and you know, we're playing stuff on the old dumps. So, I mean, are we doing everything we can? I think so. I mean, it's really tough. I mean, you know, my wife's a member of the lacrosse board, and I talked to the soccer board people, and they all say that we hope that, you know, we can get more use of the fields, or things can be done and we can continue to have our events. And, you know, as I said in the COA, you know, I think the field maintenance is the key. We need to have a more professional field maintenance program. I think it's important that we, you know, use those fields and, you know, keep them in tip-top shape. All of that being said, are there other places we can find for open space? I don't know. I mean, you know, the town was very good with, you know, buying more open space, but none of it's for recreation, you know, for group recreation. And I think from what we have now, if we can find a more multi-purpose field, that would help the town immensely.
Thank you. Mr. Humm.
Yeah, thank you. Fields are near and dear to my heart too, as a big sports fan and advocate for kids getting outside and playing and doing things along those lines. I agree with Mr. Alessandro that I think the town is doing the best that we can. It's not necessarily a fair question at this point because we do have the new middle school, and I think that'll be very beneficial for the town once it is in place. We just couldn't use it this year because of COVID. I think obviously we want more field space. I think, you know, all of the sports want better maintained fields. All of the sports want more access to the field, whether it's more practice time, just overall more ability to use the field and the other open space that we have for those kinds of activities. I think it's a work in progress. I'm excited to be part of those discussions. So I hope that if I'm elected, I can be part of those discussions and can really make an impact with our fields. Thank you.
Mr. Kustell.
Yeah, I have also coached baseball and soccer, and that is also near and dear to my heart. I've seen a lot of waterlogged fields, and I'm hoping there's something we can do about that. We've had a lot of soccer games canceled over the years, and it would be nice if we could take action. I'm not an expert in this area, but certainly better field maintenance, you know, definitely prioritize. Beyond that, I have heard some talk that we may not be serving one community as well. We don't seem to have the capacity with regard to softball diamonds that I would like to see. The new middle school has a baseball diamond. I don't believe there's a softball field there. And I've heard some complaints that a lot of our girls in town are playing in Massachusetts and following other opportunities rather than playing in Barrington where they should. If the numbers check out, and if it turns out that we truly do have an inequity, and I sense we may, then I think we should make sure we rectify that problem.
Thank you. Ms. Conway.
We have a lot of children in town. This is probably the largest population of children in every town that I've lived in. And so I am not surprised that we have a lack of recreational fields, but I think it's important to think about the recreational space and more than just our fields, and more about the space that everybody can enjoy, because it's not just about the kids playing soccer, it also is about the grandparents taking walks with their kids or bike rides or being able to enjoy the beach. And I think from a standpoint of all of our recreational facilities, we do have tremendous opportunities. We also have a bridge that's down that kids use to get over to Hampton Meadows. I don't know if that's included as part of this recreational piece, but the bridge across County Road is critically important for people to get from Bristol and all the way over to East Providence and Providence on the bike path. Our beaches are great and clean. Again, I think there could be improvement in some places, but we do have wonderful recreational facilities.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question. We're actually flying through the night. It's going very well. Yeah, Mr. Alessandro, you wanted to add something?
Well, I just wanted to say one of the main reasons why we have a waterlogged fields on some of them is because they're capped dumps. So there's a piece of plastic underneath there that cannot, it's not permeable. It's meant to obviously cap it. So that's been our problem with those. And I give the Public Works Department and everyone else a lot of credit for trying to get them up to snuff with knowing you have to fight against, you know, something that was required by the state.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move to one more question, our last question of the night before we move to closing statements. This will begin with Mr. Humm. What do you believe is the primary role of the Barrington Town Council? Is it to oversee the town government, represent the citizens of Barrington, protect the taxpayers, or something else as you would describe it in your own words?
Yeah, so I think I would follow the town's charter in terms of what the town council's role is, and that's to essentially be the legislative body of the town and also to determine policy within the town. And when I think the town council serves in both of those roles, I think it's really important to take in all the input of all different aspects of the community. I think it's important to make sure that the community understands what decisions are being made and why they're being made. And I think it's important that the town council makes reasonable decisions, makes objective decisions, has all of the facts when they make those decisions. Obviously, I know it's not always possible, but you know, to do the best job leading up to each of the town council meetings, to have all the feedback it needs and to make an informed decision. That's what I think the role is. And just to sum it up, to represent all people in town. Thank you.
Mr. Kustell.
I would agree with that. I think that we have to be as open and transparent as possible. And a lot of the time it's identifying we need speed bumps on Sweetbriar, or I'm not happy with the retaining wall on Matheson. Sidewalks are broken. Sometimes that's on a state road like Washington, where we may need help. But I think that it's to be as open as possible, and then use our best judgment in representing the values of the community, and in following up on the things we said we'd do during our campaign. In my case, that's making Barrington more walkable. That's supporting our local businesses. That's improving resiliency and in promoting renewable energy, and then reaffirming our values and community cohesion. And I think if we do what we're elected to do, and if we're open to the public and we listen as much as possible and keep those lines of communication as open as possible, we'll do a good job in representing their interests.
Ms. Conway.
I think the critical pieces here are representation and transparency. I think the council is here to represent the voices of the community, and that's all the voices of the community. I believe that takes that communication back and forth. We need to be able to have citizen input as much as possible. We need to be available to our community as much as possible, and we need to be clear about how things are going, what the impacts may be, and the direction of the town. I think it's really important. I hope this isn't too polarizing, but I think it's really important that our town council looks more like our town than what it currently does. I think it's important that we have community members as members of the town who represent all of the people of the town, whether it's people who are senior citizens, whether it's young families, women, people of color. I think it's important that we have a clear representation. I know that's difficult for 5 seats, but I think we can always do better.
Mr. Alessandro.
You know, I agree with Mr. Humm. You know, we have to follow the charter and do what it tells us we can do. We're the legislative body. We're there to govern. I mean, I always like to say the first rule of the town council is the basic blocking and tackling and governing of the town. Make sure trash is picked up, everything is done. The town, when you go to buy and sell a house, the town clerk works. All of these things are what we're in charge of doing. We're to make sure all of that stuff is being run, and to make sure it's properly funded. You know, after that, it really becomes, you know, the biggest piece that I found is the communication piece. It is impossible to communicate and to get all the communication that we need out with the ever-changing landscape that's been given to us. But I think the town works very hard to do that, and I think if I'm elected to the town council, we'll continue to do that and try to get a better communication plan.
Yeah, Mr. Humm.
I just wanted to add to what I said earlier and actually pick up on something that Carl said, and that's in furthering its role, I think it's important for the town council to help look out for the health and safety of the members of the community. You know, health, for example, I think its response to COVID, we talked about earlier, that's why that's so important. Safety, I think Annelise brought up a great point about the bike path and the roads and people biking over the bridge, which is a very dangerous situation and something that needs to be addressed. Sidewalks are something that needs to be addressed in town as well. Especially with COVID, more students are not taking the bus, but they're walking to school. And there aren't sufficient sidewalks for those kids who are walking to school and the parents who are walking them to school and the cars who are driving with all these additional people walking to school. So I think that, or at least I hope that that's something that that the town council can address in furthering its role as the legislative body and setting policy within the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kustell.
I think we can also be a driver for new solutions using our own judgment based upon the problems we identify. If someone says they can't get a good signal in the village center, we might want to help our local businesses by looking into something like community Wi-Fi, which could help people who are on limited data plans, but certainly help our local businesses, and has been done in other places. That's the kind of solution that we look for. And sometimes it's identifying problems through community input and then responding to those problems and really researching and learning the issues as well as we can. That's our role.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to our closing statements, unless anyone else wants to throw a question out there. I will begin that with Mr. Kustell. You have all of your unused comment period, which is a minute of time added on to your 1 minute closing statement. So you can say goodbye for up to 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank East Bay newspapers and the League of Women Voters for having the forum tonight. I hope it was informative and helpful for everyone. The next couple of years are going to be challenging. We know from what we've heard from town officials as to what we're looking at. We know a lot of our local businesses have not taken in the revenue that we would normally have expected through this COVID period. We're going to be facing extra challenges. However, if we stick to our comprehensive plan, we can still make progress. We can do things for resiliency that are inexpensive, like planting trees, for example, like making sure that we use more sources of renewable energy and we give people the opportunity to do that as homeowners. We can also improve our activity both digitally, as I mentioned earlier, and physically through making Barrington more walkable by improving sidewalks and pathways. We want to make sure that as a town we come out of this consistent with our objectives of our comprehensive plan. And that also would make sure that we are servicing our seniors properly so that they can live here and stay in town if they so choose. Beyond that, I think that the values of this community are clear. We want to make sure that we have the best schools that we possibly can. We want to make sure that people can afford to live here. We want to make sure we have a thriving village center, and we want to make sure that everyone truly feels welcome, that everyone knows that Barrington is their home.
Thank you. Ms. Conway, you have up to 4 minutes, rather. You have up to 4 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for hosting this League of Women Voters and East Bay Papers. It's been wonderful to be able to be maskless with the candidates as well. I just want to say in uncertain times, we have to rely on our values. I think many of the challenges that we've all faced over this last year were not things that we necessarily saw coming over the year before. And it's really important for us to know where our direction goes. One of the things for me is I know what it's like to not see faces like mine, both at work and in my life. And I know that the value diversity has in a community. I volunteered my time, as I mentioned, and supported inclusion and diversity efforts throughout each of my communities. And I recognize the barriers to our town that are new or just haven't been removed yet. And I'm also a working mom who knows what it's like to be pulled in multiple directions. I've dropped off campaign signs while ordering pizza on my way to pick up my children from soccer in the middle of a pandemic. And I can empathize with the challenge of arranging transportation for 3 children in 3 different schools without buses or bridges or sidewalks or hired help. By education, I'm a scientist. I'm a business person and a social worker, but by my nature, I'm a connector. And I've worked in corporate marketing and on behalf of humanitarian causes. I understand the challenges of balancing a budget and making difficult decisions, but also keeping your eye on the prize because, as Carl mentioned, this is going to be a long battle. It's more of a marathon than a sprint. I've lived in places with high taxes and good school systems, and I've lived in places with low taxes and desperately underfunded schools. And I believe in affordable housing and preserving our community services like our public schools, our bike path, our sidewalks, the downtown, and the library. They're what bring people here. It's what brought my husband and I here, and they're the heart of our community. I was inspired by the 2016 election to personally get politically engaged, but I have a lifetime of experience watching my father as a local politician and understand the intimacy of these roles. We are making decisions that impact our neighbors and our friends and all the people we see at the grocery store, and it's important that we take these roles seriously. And finally, I'm running to make sure that there will be a female voice on the town council. We've had incredible leadership over the last 4 decades, and it would be really disheartening to not have a female voice on the town council. So I hope that you'll vote for me by November 3rd. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Alessandro, you have up to 2 minutes.
Scott, I think you're going to like mine. I'm going a different route. I'd like to thank, obviously, the League of Women Voters and East Bay newspapers for organizing this forum. I would be honored to serve again the residents of Barrington. As most of you know, I was the highest vote getter in an election when I was elected to the COA, and I was the lowest vote getter when I did not get reelected to the school committee. So I understand how politics work, and I understand what needs to get done to govern. But my closing statement is about basic decency and respect. And in my last 2 elections, my family and I had to endure an inordinate amount of ridicule and hate. The multiple social media posts insulting my family and I were uncalled for and cruel. My supporters were bullied at kids' social events to take down my lawn signs. An elected official told me that they would not sign my nomination papers because people like me should not run. The icing on the cake was when a town council member emailed me and explained to me how cute it was that I was running for town council to give people another choice, and how nice I was to them in their campaign, but they could not possibly vote for me because I only vote for people in my own party. Not one person who was caught doing this bad behavior on social media or other places ever apologized to me. I would go on, but I think you get the point. We as neighbors need to be better and more compassionate. We need to look at somebody else in the face and say, I need to see you at the grocery store. My process as an elected official is to listen, learn, and try to see that person's side of the issue. Then I would make a decision that works best for Barrington. When I look at this and why I decided to run was to give people an option. I'm the only option that's not the status quo. Please vote for John Alessandro, the independent, for Barrington Town Council.
Thank you. Mr. Humm, you have a lot of time, don't you? You have up to 3 minutes.
Need all that time, but thank you, Scott. And thanks so much to the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island and East Bay newspapers for hosting this event. And thanks to everybody watching, listening in, participating, who might listen in at a later date. I really appreciate your interest in the town's issues. I think they're important. So thank you. You've heard a bit about our backgrounds and you've heard a bit about what we think on some of the issues. So I just want to go into a little bit more about me. My approach when I address things, and if I'm elected, the way that I'll approach things on the town council is to be collaborative and to make thoughtful, reasonable, and objective decisions that are in the best interest of the town. Even though being on the town council is considered technically, and I quote, a political position, I do not consider myself a politician. I am not running for political reasons. I'm running because I truly enjoy the public service of helping our community. And I hope that when you consider my commitment to Barrington, my professional experience as an attorney, and my volunteer work on several of our public boards, that you'll give me the chance to serve you on our town council. So I hope to have your vote on or before November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Our time is coming to an end in a tidy 1 hour, which is excellent. I'm going to turn it over to the folks from the League of Women Voters to bring us home. You got to unmute, Linda. You're all set.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the candidates and thank Scott also for making this forum possible. My name is Linda Poole and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island.
This forum will be available for reviewing starting tomorrow, thanks to Scott Pickering of East Bay Newspapers and also Faye Zuckerman, the League's media coordinator. You may access the video by going to the League's website, www.lwvri.org. I'm Tom Padua, a member of the League from Warren.
And please, everybody, vote. Figure out where you're going to go vote and do it. My name is Joanne DeVoe, and I'm from the League, and I live in Warren. We encourage everybody, men and women, to join the League. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.